This video is going to revise Hindu beliefs part 1 for AQA Religious Studies A. There will be a part 2 for Hindu beliefs coming. So at the moment we're just going to focus on the first half of the specification. So here we have the specification to have a look at. So say this is just the first part of Hindu beliefs. So we're going to focus on the ideas about the nature of God and existence here. So the main parts we're going to have a look at are different understandings of Brahman within Hinduism. We're going to have a look at the 3 features of the divine. We're going to focus on how the divine presents, and that includes the Trimurti, male and female deities, and the concept of avatars or avatara. And then finally, we're going to have a look at the idea of matter and also of cosmology, looking at a little bit to do with creation as well. So this is the first part then. So we're looking at how Hindus might understand Brahman. And there are 2 key terms here that you need to make sure you understand. And apologies if I'm pronouncing them incorrectly. So we have Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman. Now, Nirguna Brahman is the idea of God having no form or no shape. And Saguna Brahman is the idea that God does have form and can be understood through images and representations through these forms. And let's have a look at those in a little bit more detail. So when we look at the idea of Nirguna Brahman, this idea of divine consciousness is really key. So the idea is that this is God that is beyond human understanding, that our human brains are limited, so we can't really understand God fully, and that this form of God is limitless and everywhere, and also that this form of God is in lots of beings. And you can see this quote from the Upanishads about being in the heart of an ant or an elephant, that idea that God is within everything in the universe is really key with this aspect of Brahman. Now on the other side we have Saguna Brahman, and this is the idea that God takes form. So in order to help humans to understand an aspect of God, God can take form and can appear in the world, in the material world, and can help and so on. And this idea that humans can then understand that because it's something that we can connect with. One of the key ideas is that these manifestations, these forms of Brahman are endless, that all the different characteristics and all the different features and aspects of Brahman can be represented by these many different gods and goddesses that we see throughout traditional Hinduism. So we then move on to look at these 3 features of the divine. And again, really key that you understand these 3 things. So for most Hindus, they would argue that God has 3 key features. Firstly, that God exists everywhere as a non-personal God. So this is that idea again of Brahman that is everywhere, that is difficult for humans to fully understand, but is in everything. And then secondly, you have this idea of God within the heart, which is known as Antaryami. Again, I probably pronounced that wrong, but this is the idea that you can connect with God within inside yourself. So Hinduism has this idea of the Atman, also found in other faiths as well, which is a kind of part of God, or that kind of God within each person and other creatures and so on, that God is within you, that you can connect with God in that way. And then lastly is this idea of God is beyond. And this is the idea that of these deities that live in the spiritual world, that God is personal, that humans can connect with God, that God is loving. So that is this aspect of Brahman that we're looking at. So most Hindu believe that God has these 3 key features that are then represented through various different ideas within Hinduism. On the specification, it makes reference to this particular Upanishad that you really need to be able to recognise. You don't need to be able to recite it because, as you can see, it's quite long, but you do need to be able to recognise what it is and be able to talk about it. So you can have a read through the Upanishad and have a think about what does it say, what does it show Hindus possibly about God. And if you have a read through, you'll see it follows quite a repetitive format. You can see the kind of repeated words and ideas there. Essentially what this Upanishad is saying is that there are lots of different representations of God, and it also makes reference to the idea that God is beyond human understanding, outside of us being able to understand fully. But that idea of the endless, limitless nature of God is really represented in this particular Upanishad. We're now going to move on to have a look at how the divine presents, and we're going to start by having a look at the Trimurti. So these are the three main aspects of Brahman. So we've got Brahma, the creator, and just be careful not to confuse Brahman with Brahma, because it's a very easy mistake that people make quite often. So just be careful with that one. So you've got Brahma, the creator, you've got Vishnu, who is the preserver, and you've got Shiva, who is the destroyer. So these are the three main aspects of Brahman. And there are two avatars that you particularly need to know about, and both of these are avatars of Vishnu, who is most commonly associated with this idea of avatars or avatara. So the two that you need to know are Krishna and Rama. And the idea is that both of these incarnations, both of these avatars, are there to restore the Dharma, to make sure that there's not too much evil in the world, and to restore justice. And so Vishnu takes the form of lots of different avatars in Hindu texts, appearing on Earth for many, many different reasons. But usually it's associated when there's an imbalance of Dharma or when there's too much evil in the world, and that's when Vishnu appears. There is an idea of these kind of 10 key avatars of Vishnu, these 10 different forms. And some Hindus believe that these forms, 9 of them have appeared already, and there's one form that is yet to appear. And some Hindus believe this final avatar is called Kalki, and it's believed that this avatar will ride in on a white horse to destroy all of the evil in the world as a last avatar in this universe that Vishnu will appear as. So that's a kind of bit of background idea to these avatars of Vishnu. So of the two avatars you need to know, the first one we're going to have a look at is Krishna. Now, Krishna is considered a role model for many Hindus, and is considered as an example that some Hindus might look at as to how to live their life, particularly in the sense of doing your duty. And there's particular accounts of Krishna in books like the Mahabharata, where Krishna is saying to people that, you need to do your duty, that's what's important. He is considered to be a kind of warrior figure, a heroic figure throughout the stories, and is someone that many Hindus might look up to. Rama is the other avatar that you need to know. Many are familiar with the story of Rama and Sita, found in the Ramayana. And so Rama, very widely worshipped, very often found in home shrines or in temples. And again, many Hindus might look to Rama as a role model to follow, as someone who's heroic, represents bravery, being virtuous, and also very strongly, and this is found particularly in the Diwali celebrations, this idea of good triumphing over evil is very strongly represented by the story and accounts of Rama too. So the last aspect we're going to look at in terms of how the divine presents is looking at the male and female deities. Now the specification asks you to look at 4 in particular. You've got Ganesh and Hanuman, and you've got Lakshmi and Saraswati. Now you could look at other examples of male and female deities. As we said before, there are many, many deities you could have a look at, but you just need to be able to know these 4 in particular as they are mentioned on the specification. So the idea is that these deities represent different parts of Brahman, they reflect different aspects of what Brahman is like. So Ganesh in particular is worshipped as the remover of obstacles and is very well known for having an elephant's head. You will see lots of statues and figures of Ganesh all across the world. It's probably one of the most famous Hindu gods that you would encounter. Hanuman, found in the story of the Ramayana, helps to rescue Sita and is particularly worshipped for the idea of strength and being devoted and being loyal. So again, if someone was looking to really focus on the idea of loyalty, they might worship and focus on Hanuman in particular. Then Lakshmi is particularly associated with learning, and also musicians as well might worship Lakshmi too. Then Saraswati is associated with wealth and beauty, often worshipped at Diwali because it's the new financial year, and also very much worshipped when people are applying for a new job. So these four are four examples of deities that represent something of Brahman that enable humans to connect to that and to be able to focus on that in terms of their worship and to be able to understand God in a little bit more of a human sense. We're now going to focus on that very bottom part of the specification that we're considering. Now, there's quite a lot in this part, so I'm going to go over it a few different times. So there's a little bit of repetition in this part of the video, but I think it's important to keep trying to connect these ideas and to understand them as a whole picture about how some Hindus might understand the world and cosmology and so on. So there's a few key terms, some quite complex ideas to get your head around. So let's just go through some of the basics. So one of the key things in order to understand how many Hindus might understand the world is the idea that time is cyclical. So time does not have a starting and an end point. Once it's started in the creation, it exists and is sustained, it's then destroyed and then is started and created again. So time follows a cyclical pattern. Within that, the world, the universe, is repeatedly created. And for many Hindus, there is this idea that the universe is just one of many bubbles floating in space. So the idea that there are lots of universes that are being created and destroyed throughout time and space. So that's one part you've got to get your head around first of all. Then there's this understanding of how the universe is and the different realms and areas. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But this idea that there's not just one creation, the universe wasn't created once, lots of different created stories, lots of different forms of the universe, different features of the universe as well. And also the key thing you need to understand is that there are two key aspects, two things that things are made of: spirit and matter. So these are the ideas that we're going to unpick throughout the rest of this video. So let's start with the idea of cosmology. So cosmology is the idea of how the universe began and the nature of the universe. Now, the traditional view in Hinduism is that there are many universes floating around space, and each of them was created differently, and different ideas about how the world was created within that. Now, one of the images that you might find mentioned in texts like the Puranas is the idea that there is this model of the universe, or model of the kind of structure of the world, where in the centre is Mount Meru, and there are heavens above and hells below, and that around that there are these 14 worlds that make a kind of multiverse. Now that sounds like quite a complicated idea, but the key thing within Hinduism is that there is, within the universe, there's different worlds. There are upper worlds and lower worlds, and these worlds contain lots of different diverse inhabitants, ranging from all sorts of different creatures, so not just humans, other creatures as well. And that's the key thing you've got to understand. So in terms of our understanding of the universe, there is different worlds within that, okay, higher and lower ones, or upper and lower ones, and that these worlds contain a variety of different inhabitants within them. As you've already said, there are many different creation stories within Hinduism, because the idea is that the universe is constantly being created and destroyed. So there isn't one particular creation narrative, although there is a favoured narrative in the story of Vishnu sitting on the snake and then the lotus flower, which many of you may be familiar with. If you're not, you can go in and have a look at that one. It's very easy to find. But generally, there are lots of different creation stories. And we now come to another key quote. So this is another one that you need to be able to recognise because it's on the specification. So it's really important that you can understand what this quote is saying. So this quote is from the Rig Veda, And this is talking about creation. So I'm just going to read out the quote and then you've got the meaning on the screen. So the quote goes, "Who really knows? Who will here proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? The gods came afterwards with the creation of this universe. Who then knows whence it has arisen?" And basically what this quote is saying is that no one knows how the world was created, that no one alive now, no one can understand fully how it happened. So that's another key thing. In Hinduism, the nature and the specifics of how the world created is unimportant because no one knows exactly how it was created. So to tie it all together then, the key idea here is that there are many creation stories, that the universe is seen as this kind of cluster of bubbles, and that each universe has these three realms, the upper realm, the earthly realm, and the lower realm, and that these realms contain a diverse range of beings within them. So moving on from there then, we then have this idea of the yugas, or the 4 ages. Now this is an idea within Hinduism that time is separated into 4 periods, 4 yugas. Each of these gets shorter and it's believed to get more corrupt as time goes on. And then this ties together what we were talking about avatars earlier. The belief is that at the moment we are in the most corrupt of the yugas, and that at the end of this current age, Vishnu will appear in the avatar of Kalki, riding a white horse, and will remove the remaining evil and will start a new golden age. The first yuga will start again. So the key thing here to understand is that time is divided into these 4 periods. Each one gets shorter and more corrupt, and at the end, the evil is removed and then it starts again. So this last part is one of the most complicated ideas that we're going to cover. So I'm going to explain it in a couple of different ways. There's a little bit of repetition on these slides as we try and tie these ideas together. So the first thing we need to understand is that everything in the world is either made up of matter or spirit. Now, in Hindu belief, generally, spirit is considered more important. So the idea is, for example, the Atman, which is your spiritual part of yourself, is far more important than your physical body. So you're made up of matter or spirit, as everything in the world, but spirit is more important. This matter is shaped by something called the Triguna, and everything in the universe has different amounts of these 3 qualities, the Triguna. These gunas are a threat. They tie us to the world. They make us believe that everything we experience is very real. However, many Hindus believe that that's not true, that this is an illusion. And this is the idea of Maya. And so Hindus believe that to reach moksha, which is the idea that at the end of being reincarnated many times, you will try and reach moksha. That's the goal for all Hindus, to reach this place where you're reconnected with Brahman. And for many Hindus, they believe that in order to achieve that, what you need to do is to escape the 3 gunas, realise the truth, realise that not everything you experience is real, and that you should be focusing on the spiritual things rather than the material things. So we're just going to have a look at this in a little bit more detail. So let's go back to this idea of spirit and matter. So Hindus will interpret this idea slightly differently. You'll find a range of different interpretations of this. But generally, most Hindus would argue, as I said before, that spirit is more important because it can't be destroyed, it can't be corrupted, whereas matter can be destroyed and can be influenced by lots of different things. So when we're talking about this idea of matter and spirit, we are talking about this idea of the Atman, the kind of soul, for want of a better word. When this soul reaches moksha, it's when people realise that matter and substance is an illusion, that it doesn't matter. So the matter doesn't matter at all. And this idea of Maya, the idea that everything is an illusion, it stops us realising the truth, is a key feature within Hinduism. So the idea is that Hindus might try and reach enlightenment, they try and clear their minds of concern with the material world. So not be concerned with the material and focus instead on the spiritual. So we then come to this idea of the Triguna. So the idea is that matter goes through 3 stages: creation, maintenance and destruction. So again, you can see the link there between the Trimurti that we looked at earlier. And the Triguna basically tie us to the world. They make us focus on matter, and they try and convince us that matter is real. But the goal of our life is to try and overcome that and to realise that it's just an illusion. So hopefully you're still following along. So this idea of the Triguna, just to give you a little bit more detail, you can see an image here that represents the three different aspects of the Triguna. You don't need to go into too much detail in this part, but you just need to understand that the idea is that beings contain different amounts of these three gunas. So when we come back to the idea of the different universes, the ones in the upper universes, the heavenly beings, contain lots of the first Triguna, whereas the ones in hells and lower beings contain lots of the third. So it's tying that idea together. So within that idea of the universe, with these upper, lower, and kind of earthly realms, that links to this idea of the Triguna. So all of these ideas are connected. So let's bring all of that together then. So we've got the idea that the universe is made up of spirit and matter. The world, the physical world, is made of matter, which goes through these three stages: creation, maintenance, and destruction, and is held together, is tied together by the Triguna that tries to make everything seem real. But this is an illusion, and the aim of a Hindu's life is to try and realise that this is an illusion and to realise the truth about reality. So that is the kind of key concept, the key ideas. And you've got another version of that written underneath. So the idea is that Maya, this illusion, it modifies matter, it modifies it into the world that we experience. We think it's real, but it's not. And we have to understand that spirit is what's important, and spirit is the only thing that matters.